The El Paso Community College Chicana Studies Program Humanities Lecture Series presents Las Pláticas, a conversation with Dr. Juan Bruce Novoa.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mauricio Rodriguez from the Chicano Studies Program at El Paso Community College, and this is the first interview in a series of lectures entitled Las Pláticas, funded by a grant for the National Endowment for the Humanities. We're here today with Dr. Juan Bruce Novoa from the University of California at Irvine Spanish and Portuguese Department. Dr. Bruce Novoa is internationally renowned as a leading Chicano literary critic. Welcome, Dr. Bruce Novoa.
Thank you for having me.
The focus of this lecture series was to introduce faculty, students, and community members to the importance of this particular field of study. Can you define for us your concept of what being Chicana or Chicano is?
Well, that would be very difficult if you wanted to cover everything that everyone agrees upon. My definition has always been Chicano is someone of Mexican descent living permanently in the United States. It doesn't matter what their politics or anything else. That covers everything.
What would you say are some of the defining qualities of the movement which sprouted this concept or this particular field of study, specifically within the Chicano studies movement?
What the qualities would be the desire to create within the university structure a home for Chicanos. People have to remember that back when we began in the 60s, most universities had very few Chicano students taking classes, being involved, graduating. They also had very few professors. We weren't a presence in the universities. So as a very important step to moving forward in the studies was just getting us a space within it. And if you had to look at a quality of something achieved, it's been rather successful, although we still would like more, in achieving the opening of the space itself. Now, when you look at what's done within Chicano studies, I believe at its best, what it does is show us what we have been in a semi-objective way, because we're long past the days when we thought that any kind of study could be totally objective. But we've gone back and found out what our history is, how we've become what we are. There's still a lot more work to do, but we understand ourselves a lot better. When we began, it was assumed by many that we really didn't have a history, or that it was the stereotypical history. But now we've found that it's a history with a lot of variety, a lot of different things that have gone on. We've expanded our definition, and that's a quality that we haven't stuck to definitions that were pragmatic, necessary at the beginning, things we had to say that we were because people asked us, and before we even knew exactly what we were giving definitions. But we've been open enough, a quality of openness, to expand. A major part of that expansion was forced on many of us, although I worked in feminist studies very early, but we've been smart enough to open to the women regionally. The first definition of Chicanismo was very Southwest, despite the fact that Chicago was a major city already. So we now see it more national, and that's that quality of openness, which reflects a long history of our communities of being open to others. And I think that's a major quality.
How did you personally become interested in the field of Chicano studies?
With my students. It was as simple as that. I was a graduate student in 1969. Probably 68 would be a better start of it. And these things were going on, these political movements. I was active in the unionizing of graduate students. I was active in different causes in the Democratic Party. And then the new focus on ethnicity, our own ethnicity, because many of us had worked in the Black Civil Rights Movement earlier. And when there was a shift to look at ourselves as a unit of ethnicity that deserved more attention and more rights, and that it wasn't that they had problems and we were fine. When that shift came, my students were asking for things, and they were asking for faculty members. We had no faculty members. So some of us who were graduate students stepped in to fill that role, function as leaders, although most of us hadn't even graduated yet, and do whatever the students, the undergraduate students, needed done. And that we could speak with a little more authority just because we were already in graduate school. That's how I really got into it. The students needed something done. I shifted my attention away from some other political and labor issues, really, to focus more on the creation of Chicano studies within the university. This was at the University of Colorado, by the way.
As in any emerging movement, there seems to be a seminal or a singular event which brings the movement to the forefront of the public's eye. What would you consider to be the most important movement within the Chicano studies movement?
Within the Chicano studies movement itself, that's difficult to divorce from the Chicano political movement, because if you try to see one event that would be from Chicano studies, talking about the academic part, that attracts attention, it would be probably questionable if we've had it yet. Most people in the country, even a lot of Chicanos, aren't that aware of Chicano studies existing. What I would call a seminal moment in the movement that attracted national attention to the fact that there was this other group, and we were that other group calling for attention, would be the Poor People's March on Washington. After Martin Luther King's death, because he was the one planning it, it was still carried out. And because Martin Luther King was no longer there, each group developed its own leadership. There was no one sort of star with that kind of charisma that Martin Luther King had, to bring it all together under one voice. And what emerged was a dialogue among the groups, sometimes not always on the same agenda. And from that, Corky Gonzalez arose to say there are brown questions. It's not black and white. And I think people saw for the first time that there was something different. Now, it had been there in the Democratic Party. The support for the Kennedy campaign had been there, but it never attracted a national attention. Often, unfortunately, it's what is seen as a challenging act that draws more attention than the supporting acts. And at this moment, with that march, it was quite clear, and it made news headlines, and it was on nightly news, that there was a new player. And this player was Mexican-American, Chicano, whatever the media wanted to call it. They weren't exactly sure what to call it at that moment, but there was this other voice. And I think that's a seminal moment, because it attracts attention. People know what's going on very superficially, but they know that there's something. And then probably the next one that attracted a lot of attention would be maybe almost at the same time would be the Cesar Chavez movement to create the union in California, because although it started in the mid-60s, it was a little later that it expanded into other states and even got into the East Coast. So there was this strike going on. There was a leader of it, and that leader had major support by figures like the Kennedys. So, of course, the media followed the Kennedys to Cesar Chavez. But again, like the March on Washington, it was suddenly on the news. It was there. Chicanos were seeing it from all over, and that something was going on. So those two